Hello, and welcome to POMA Does, a podcast produced by the Pennsylvania Osteopathic Medical Association. We provide a voice for osteopathic medicine and share insights on issues important to osteopathic physicians, residents, and students, as well as those who embrace the osteopathic philosophy. POMA's mission is to promote the distinctive philosophy and practice of osteopathic medicine for our patients, our members, and the communities we serve. Thanks for tuning in.
Okay, good evening, everyone, and thank you for attending this podcast on committees of POMA. With me tonight is the current president of POMA, Dr. John Collada, and also past president of POMA, Dr. Joseph Zawissa. Tonight we're going to discuss the various aspects of participating on a committee in POMA and talk about some benefits of it, some understandings that we have with committees. So maybe from a historical perspective, I'll ask Dr. Zawissa to kind of begin the discussion with committee function and attendance and such.
Sure. Yeah, thanks, Bill. So first piece of advice here to you is buckle up and get ready for the ride, because this is where it starts, putting your committees together. It's a tedious but rewarding process to be able to put together the groups that you think can do the best job to advance the organization over the next year. When I put out my call for volunteers, we had a good response, and that really helps when you have a lot of people with a lot of talent that you can plug into different places. Our committees, do a lot of the work of the organization, coming up with ideas, reviewing plans, and making adjustments to them, and helping us get where we want to go. And, it's really important to have the right people on those committees to get the work done. So that's what I would say is so important about this. And it's something that we put a lot of time into. We get input from our staff. We get input from, current committee chairs to see what they think is going on and how they can have the best committee possible.
John, your comments?
Yeah, I think I have found that POMA, the osteopathic community and our members, really, POMA is rich with talent. And the talent that we've seen come to the top really is evident in the committee work. When people respond to the call for volunteers, I know I asked, what areas of interest might you have and what are your strengths and where might you want to serve? And it was really valuable to me to consider what people's interests were and to draw on those interests and those strengths when putting my committees together. And certainly we have so many different options and so many different areas where you might want to serve that the membership can make a difference by service on this committee. So please sign up.
I agree. And I hope all of you listening have already filled out their volunteer form that you received from the headquarters. If not, please try to get that done within the next week or so. In my opinion, guys, the most important people in POMA, the most valuable people in POMA are our members. And every individual member has their own gifts, their own talents, and can serve a plethora of committees that we have in POMA. And believe me, all the committees are active. I'm sure, like John has said, there are plenty who have the talents who can bring a lot of fruit to the tree in committee function. And that also includes the task force that we appoint through the year. It also includes work groups that may be established out of need. And really, you, the member, are the most important. But next, I feel an important is the committee function. The committees actually drive the function of POMA. And we've got it covered from all aspects, from education to communications to government affairs. I would encourage you, please. It doesn't take a whole lot of time. Some committees meet monthly, some committees meet quarterly. Each has their own particular charge, and I really feel that's where it's at.
There's time commitments to fit every time budget that there is. Some meet monthly, some not as much, some meet on an as-needed basis. And there's different positions within each committee. There's the level of chair or vice chair, or just a member, which they all require different time commitments. So,
are you thinking that you might be interested in moving on to leadership positions? Participation in committees or chairing committees is actually crucial in that process of gaining experience with POMA. POMA has a rich history and tradition, and the committees are the result of our strategic plan, which was just approved by our board, and there's function for every committee listed that we have.
I think, Bill, it might be helpful for the listeners to really get some examples of some things that we've done over the last year or two in our committee structure. Joe, during your presidency, your big push was to establish podcasts. And the Digital Engagement Committee or the Podcast Committee really has done great work in bringing all sorts of messages to our membership, everything from CME on RSV to perspectives from our children as kids of doctors to wellness tips for wintertime. It's been all over the place. And the committee really digs down deep and gets ideas and then goes out to members to talk about, presenting these podcasts. And really the people who started it were the students really gave us the big push that we needed to just get started. That was great. I established a task force on military and veteran engagement, and all the members on that committee served our country in the military, and we hope to be able to bring some things to our veterans and our military members from that committee. Our Government Affairs Committee really speaks to how we might take positions on legislation in the state and really get down to what really matters to physicians, things like fighting practice creep, and making sure that insurance companies have us as people that need to be heard. So all sorts of different aspects of practice and our lives really can be impacted by the committees that do real work, that help us personally and professionally throughout our career. So those are just 3 examples. Whenever I sit and listen and participate, I'm very, very encouraged that POMA really has the best interests of its members at heart. And it does come down to that grassroots members on committees and what they do and what their input is.
I can speak about government affairs myself, being the influence pillar for the last couple of years and being a longtime member of the Government Affairs Committee when it was a different name. And one of the real interesting things that we've found out is by being more vocal, being more visible to the legislature and the Commonwealth, we have been recognized now as a resource that some of the legislators will ask us for opinions on legislation that impacts the patients that we serve or to care for in the Commonwealth also.
Yeah, we've had a lot of successes, and there's many more stories, and those are just some of the highlights. One thing I always tell people, too, something to bring to a committee is passion or interest. Honestly, we're all listening to episode 52 tonight. I've got to tell you, a few years ago, podcasts were not something that I thought was in my wheelhouse, not something that I really knew a whole lot about, but it was something I was, got involved with. And, it requires a passion to keep it going. So I would tell our listeners, don't feel that you have to be the biggest expert on whatever committee topic you have an interest in. Just come with passion, ideas, and, we work with them. It's amazing how some little ideas that might come to one committee can blossom into something either within that committee or another committee. And I think, one of the things that POMA does well is the leadership works together. And certainly during my year, and it continues now, the leaders of the 4 pillars talk to each other on a regular basis to see, what ideas are coming up in committees that might be useful in another committee. I think one of the things is there's a lot of overlap in things that are done, not in a bad way, but in a beneficial way, in a symbiotic relationship type of way. And that's a helpful thing. So again, I tell people, don't feel like you have to be the expert on, public relations or governance to sign up for that. If you have an interest in it, talk to somebody who's in leadership, talk to somebody who's in the staff, talk to somebody who's in that position now, and they can give you some guidance on it. But we'd love to hear your ideas.
Oh, I totally agree. One of the things, too, about our leadership is the transparency that exists. And it's existed for a good number of years now. And the leadership is very involved in interacting with the various committees. And it's interesting to see when one committee works with another on a particular matter, there's a synergism that seems to occur where maybe one particular project or issue or concern is addressed by 2 committees and we come out with 2 more projects out of it.
Yeah, we're victims of our own success sometimes. I think one of the biggest takeaways, the interest that you may express really comes out later on when the committee work gets done. And Joe, you're right. I think sometimes just one idea from one member on one committee, that might be the person who doesn't say much. It's that thoughtful insight that then gets discussed and comes up with something, another project, another way of looking at things. So it's really gratifying to see that happen.
Boy, I can't tell you how many times I'm sure we've all been in that position where we thought, I got this idea, but it's really not a very good idea. And then somebody else says it and everybody's like, oh, that's the best idea ever.
And they get the credit, which is just fine.
It's all for the benefit of the membership and the patients that we serve in the Commonwealth. It's win no matter how you look at it.
Exactly. I think we do that very well. Committees don't exist for the glory of one person, certainly. And that's definitely true within POMA. And as you both have said, we work for the betterment of the organization, for our physicians and for our patients. So, this call for volunteers that you've issued, Bill, is a good thing. And I hope a lot of people respond to it. Even if you've been doing this for a long time, I'm sure you want people to respond still and not just assume that, that they're going to spend more time on that committee without responding, correct?
Absolutely. In fact, the committees are for all ages. I know there are a couple of us here who are rather older and longer in tooth, but I would particularly urge the residents as well as the physicians in their first few years in practice to get involved, because they're bringing in fresh things. They're bringing in things that maybe we never heard of. It's something I really would encourage all ages to get involved with. We need as much involvement from our membership as possible. And with more members interested, we can do more.
Absolutely. I think that all the ages have different needs and different perspectives, and they need to be heard. And so one way to do that is through the committee work.
And I'll tell you, Bill, one thing that I learned that kind of surprised me when I started putting my list together, we had an awful lot of people apply. And, at first your reaction is, well, that's a bad thing because that's a lot of people that I have to figure out what to do with. Well, it turns out there's an awful lot of members that we need in our committees, more than you would think. And, having a lot of people reply, it's actually a really good thing, because the questionnaire that goes out, the survey we ask people to complete, it doesn't just say, what do you want to do? And that's the end of the survey. It asks about, their interests and things like that. And it's amazing when you think somebody's going to fit really well in one area, but then you really take a second look and you're like, oh, wow, they could really fit well into this area. And I think that's a place, when I put my committees together, and John did the same thing when he put his committees together, we spend a day, pretty much a whole day with the staff, working through lists and applicants and seeing where can people best serve, where have they served before, what experience might they be bringing. And it's amazing how at the end of the day, you really have a product that you're pretty proud of. And then even more amazing when you realize at the end of your presidential year, how much that list that you put together, how much that army of people that you put together has really helped you get forward with where you want to be for the organization.
Those good functioning committees are a real joy. They're a real pleasure.
Yes, I couldn't agree with you more, John and Joe. Like I said earlier, the work is done through the committee. The work is done by the members. We're just in a position to keep things organized or direct and maybe collate some of the functions or work done by the committee to really make the process work.
I think you set February 29th as the deadline, leap year, special day, hard to forget for people to sign up for committees. Is that right?
Right. You're right, Joe.
Okay. So that leaves a little less than a week, and hopefully you have that good problem that seems like a bad problem, but it's really a good thing.
And we'll tell.
That's great. Yeah, it's wonderful.
Bill, like I said, good luck. President is a very rewarding year, and it's a lot of work. It's also a lot of fun to hand it off to and get a minute to breathe. But like I said, buckle up now, because this is when it really starts, and you're going to be busy, but it's rewarding.
Looking forward to it, Joe. And thank you both, Joe and John, for participating this evening. So good that I could look back on the wisdom and experience of past presidents, because I know they're there to help. And I really appreciate that very much. So for all of the listeners tonight, please get out, fill out that volunteer form, get it into headquarters, and we will be meeting in March and put the committees together. And the more the merrier.
Thank you for joining us for this edition of POMA Does. Be sure to subscribe to POMA Does wherever you listen to your podcasts, and tell your friends and colleagues to tune in. Learn more about osteopathic medicine and POMA on our webpage, www.poma.org, and join the conversation on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube. Or email us at poma@poma.org. We'd love to hear from you. Join us next time for another edition of POMA Does.